Hello friends, today's topic is HTML form and I'm going to cover all the elements, attributes, values and options which are available in the HTML form section, including HTML and HTML5. So let's start. So the HTML form is a kind of element in which you have sub elements in it, like this first name, last name, or it may be gender, email, phone number, and etc. And this is something which is a parent container. So form is the tag which is parent container for all its elements. Inside that form you can have label to name some elements like this. So first name is our label, but if you see, when I click on this first name, automatically this first name field is getting highlighted. I can show you again. I clicked on this, the first name field is getting highlighted, even though I have not clicked on this, but only the label. That is happening because of this for attribute. So this for attribute is something which has the link to the input or any of the form elements. So how to link that? It is very simple. In the for attribute, you have to write a name for the ID. So what your ID is here, the input has ID of name. So you just have to write the same ID here in the for attribute and it will be linked. So the same thing is happening with the last name also. I clicked on this last name and last name is getting highlighted. Let's say I don't want to highlight a last name when I click on this last name label, but I want to highlight the first name only. So I will do this, that ID of last name is name, but what input label is highlighting to. So the label is linked to name. So instead I will write f name here. And if you see now, when I click on this, the first name is getting highlighted instead of name. If I want to correct it again, I just want to highlight the name. So I clicked on it and here is the name. So when I click this, the name is getting highlighted. So likewise, the for attribute is there for linking purpose and ID attributes value has to be there as a value as for attribute. Okay, so form we are going to see. This is a form element which is a non-empty tag. So we have to end it here, and inside the form elements we have different tags like a table tag, right, which we had, and we had tr, ts, td, all other tags were there. So the same way form element is there, and inside the form element you have to write input or select or text area and other elements. So let's write some inputs first. So label is something which you can use to just give name to your form element. So the first element is input element. So input is a text element. So by default, if you don't write any type here, so type is equal to text, we have written, even though you don't write it, it will be text only. It will not be number or radio button or checkboxes, right? So by default, input type is text only. If you want, you can give it. And ID I have given just to link this label for with this. So when I click on it, it will get highlighted. I have already covered this. So whatever value attribute you have written in on the input, that value attribute plays major role here. So when John is written, by default John is coming here. So when I click there and type my name, it is coming there here. So whenever you want to set default value, you can just use value attribute. And when you use that in the name attribute, whatever the name you have given to this, right? So I have given f name only. It can be same for ID and name, that doesn't matter. But what matters more is the name attributes value is something which is acting as a container here. So whatever value you give here, when you submit the form and when the form gets posted to your server, then the server technology, whichever it is, like PHP, ASP, JSP or whatever, is going to target or capture the data from this particular container only, which is f name in our case. I will show you how it works. Then there is another label for last name and another text box. So likewise, you can create multiple text box. There is no submit button created, but I will show you how the data is getting submitted. The label element we just saw. Now we will see radio button element. So here, radio button we are going to cover now. But if you want to see how the form gets submitted to the server, so please don't skip the video and watch it carefully. Step by step I am going to explain, and watch till the end. Okay, so input type text was the default text element, right? Input element. If you write input type radio instead of text, it becomes the radio button here. You see the output is radio button. If you don't write radio, it is going to be the text only. See, it is text now. So default is text. If you write radio, it will become radio. ID you can give anything whichever you like. Name you have to keep it in mind that it is going to contain value you select. So the value of this particular element is HTML. So whenever someone clicks on this particular radio button, the value is going to be stored in language key, or you can say the parameter, and in which the value is getting stored. So which value it will store is HTML. But if you notice, the input tag is there, another input tag have the same name, then there is another third input tag which is also having the same language as a name. That is because you want to select only one option from all these elements, right? So for multiple choice questions, you must have faced that you can select only one option from amongst all these, right? So that you can do by enabling this first name to by having only one name. So if you write something else here, let's say as the name, then this is not going to be the part of a rest of the radio buttons. Let me run the code, and if you see, I can check only one radio button from this CSS and JavaScript. But what if I click on this HTML? That is also getting selected, and that happened because we just changed the name. So the rule is, until and unless you have all the names correctly and unique name to all the radio buttons, that is going to form a group. So this is a group of 3 radio buttons, and you can only select one radio button at a time. See this. And this happened only because we given the same name to all 3 radio buttons. But value can be different. So value attribute, you can have different values. So whatever we select, it is going to get submitted to the server. I will show you that. Okay. So the same way, instead of radio, you can just type checkbox, and all the things remain same. Only 2 changes are there. When you have written radio, at that time you were having same name to all 3 radio buttons. But this time all 3 checkboxes are going to have different names, because this is not a group. Checkbox is something which you can check multiple times, right? Like hobbies, one person can have multiple hobbies. The same way, the type is going to be checkbox instead of radio. ID can be anything whichever you want, but the name, it is vehicle 1, vehicle 2, vehicle 3, right? So I can select multiple vehicles here, whichever I want. I can select 2, 1, or all 3, and that's why the checkbox is there for multiple selection. And in that case, you should have different names, because on server it is going to capture whether the person has first hobby, second hobby, or third hobby, which could be bike, car, or boat, right? And you can give the values here as the input button. So let me show you how these names are going to be sent to the server. When you click on this submit button, if you see, the data submitted to the server contains 3 keys, vehicle 1, 2, and 3, because I have selected 3 keys, right? I will select first and last key, and when I submitted that, now the vehicle 1 and vehicle 3 keys are only there. But if you notice, it is assigning a value to each key. So bike is assigned to vehicle 1 and boat is assigned to vehicle 3. That means this vehicle 1 and 3 or 2, which we have given in terms of name here in our code, is going to be the container of the value. So you should write it carefully. Okay, the server side technology is going to capture that value. Okay, so now you can have multiple checkboxes, and submit button also I'm going to cover now. See, whenever you want to create a submit button, you just write input type submit, and whatever value you give, it will be the button's text. So I have given submit value, instead I will say register, let's say. So value is register now, and if I refresh, the button's value is register. So likewise, you can create the submit button, but the main part is, whenever you write input type submit, it is going to create a submit button. But when you click on it, or when the user clicks on it, where it is going to post the data, that is the main part, and that we have to write in the form of action. So action is an attribute for the form element, which is a parent element of our elements, and the form element should have action attribute, and its value should be a path to a server side technology or API, which is going to be present on the cloud or on the hosting provider or in your laptop also. That should be present there to capture all your form submitted data. So whatever the data you submit in the form of this form, when the user submits it, that data is going to be captured by this particular file. In my case, it is PHP. In your case, it can be Node.js URL or ASP.JSP page, right? Whichever the server technology is. So that technology will capture all the elements inside this form, with the help of these name attributes. So whatever value you have given as a name, f name, l name, that is going to be sent along with its value, whether it is John or Doe. So when I submitted it, you can see the keys, first name and l name. These are the query parameters or the keys which has value assigned to it. The same way you can have a different value, and server-side technology will capture that value, but that value is going to be stored in the same name. So name attribute is important here. Okay, so now you know that action is there to submit the data to any of the particular file which is server-side technology. Now we will see what all other options we have in the form of elements. Now we will switch to the next chapter. Since we have covered the basic chapter, the form attributes. The form attribute chapter will cover all the attributes which we are going to have in the form. So attributes like for, type, id, name and value we have already covered. We are not going to see that. We have also covered action attributes for the form. Now let's consider the target attribute. So target attribute is something which we have covered in the anchor check chapter, where whenever we create the link, if we want to open it in a new tab, we were supposed to give underscore blank as a value, right? The same thing is there, but it is not for the anchor tag. This time it is for the form tag itself. So target is equal to underscore blank. If you write, when the user clicks on it, the form is not going to submit in this particular window itself. It is going to open a new window and it will show you the submitted form there. So let me click on it. See, the new window is getting opened. So this is happening because of this target is equal to underscore blank. Okay, so the next thing is method. So by default, the form method is get only. If you don't write this, then also it is going to be get only, because there are two methods, get and post. Get is the default one. Get is less secure also. We can check the difference later. Let me show you how it works first. So whenever you submit the form, by default it is get method. Even though you write get, that is not going to create any difference. When you submit the data, if you see, the data is getting printed here in the address bar. So it is not a very secure method. If someone gives password, let's say, let me write this password. So input type is going to be password, just to demonstrate how it is not safe. So now if whatever I am writing, let's say I have written something, you are not going to see that, right? Since it is a password. But when I submit it, you can see it in the address bar. What I have typed, XYZ. So that is not secure. Anyone who is going to use the get method, right, their data is going to be shown here in the address bar. So that is not secure. If you have less sensitive data, you can use that. But if you have secure data to be sent, you can always use post method, which is this one, method post. And this time if you submit the data, let's say, it is not going to be shown in the address bar, but the data is getting captured by the server. So that is the beauty of post method. Then there is a difference given. It is a very important question for the interviews, that what is the difference between get and post. So see this, get appends the form data to the URL in the name and key value pair, right? I have already shown you this. And never use get method for the sensitive data, because it is visible to the address bar, and the get method have length, so which is restricted one. It is restricted to 2048 characters only. So if you have more data than that, it is not going to work. And use full form submissions where a user wants to bookmark the result, then in that case it is very good. Let's say we want to bookmark some YouTube video, right? In that case, let's say we want to bookmark a W3 school web page, which is let me search for it. Okay, let's search for the news, and let's say we want to bookmark particular news which is going to have a unique URL, right? And that URL should be in the form of get method. When we do that, that is going to be bookmarked in our browser, and that is possible due to get method only. But if you don't have anything in the address bar, let's say this is our address bar where the data is getting shown, right? If you have something like this where the data is required in the address bar and then only it is going to work, you can just bookmark that, and that is possible because of the get method, even though form is submitted. But if you have post method, that is not going to have any text in the address bar, right? So you cannot bookmark it. You can just bookmark this particular page, but you are not going to get the data if there are any query parameters. Okay, then get is less secure, which I already mentioned. and post is more secure. It cannot be bookmarked, but it is secure. It has no limitation of the size. You can send any data, and it is based on HTTP request protocol. Okay, so always use post in the form of data contains sensitive information, right? Then autocomplete attribute is there. For the form attribute, means the form tag, you can just have an autocomplete attribute on, and when you do that, whatever you are going to type, it is going to write a suggestion for you. So AWD is a suggestion for me because I have typed that, right? If I start typing Sagar, let's say, and submit it, next time when I come back and type here, before typing, it is giving me the suggestion. That is because of this autocomplete on attribute. If I do off, it will not show me that suggestions, right? So you can enable or disable this. So that is the thing, and by default it is enabled. So when you click on it, even though you don't have autocomplete on or off, it is enabled because by default it is on. So that is the second thing. And then there is a no validated attribute. That is very simple, but you are not going to see any effect because here, let's say, I mean, let me show you how it works. So when I click on it, it is getting clicked, right? So why? Because there is no validated, and even though you remove it, let's say, then also it is going to get submitted. So you are not going to know what is the difference in between them. Let me tell you what is the difference here. You have to write required attribute in order to see the effect. And now when I submit the form, it is asking me to fill out this field. Why? Because I have given the required attribute. And if you want to skip that required attribute, let's say you have 100 fields here, like name, email address, mobile, and etc. For all the 100 fields, you are not going to remove required again and again for each and every element. If you don't want to do that, you can just write here what? The no validate attribute. When you do that, it does not have to be a value for the no validate, it is just an attribute. And when you do that, even though required is written, right, even though required is written, that is not going to consider, it is going to submit the form because you have written no validate. By the time when you remove no validate, it is going to consider the validation. So that is the use of no validate, but you need required attribute there. Then we are going to consider the next chapter. In the next chapter, we are going to have form elements. So form elements are input, we have already seen that. Label, we have already seen that. Then we are going to see select, text area, button, field set, legend, data list, opt group, etc., right? Option and opt group. So input we have already seen, input type text we have seen, then label we have seen, select we have not seen yet. So select box is a drop down. Basically you just have to write select box open and select box close. So select is a tag, and inside that you just have to write option. So option open and option close you have to do first, and each option should have a value. So whatever value you have given, that is going to submit in the server, but whatever text you have written, that is going to be seen by the user. So let's say user has selected sub, that sub in small is going to get submitted to the server. So it has id for this purpose, for linking this label to the id, so that I clicked on label, but this select box is getting highlighted. But the name, which is important here, car's name is going to contain these values, one of these values. So when I select sub, cars is equal to sub is going to send to the server. See this, car is equal to sub. That's why name is important, and these are the options. So that is about select box. And then for the options, if you want one of the option to be selected by default, you can just write selected attribute there, right? Selected attribute is there which has no value, you just write that, and it is selected by default even though it is the third option. Let's say we don't want it here and we want to select the fourth option by default. See, that is getting selected. Then there is a visible values like size. You can mention what size you want to see. So by default size was not there, but when you write size to the select box, it is going to show you 3 options. When you write 3, when I write 2 size, it is going to show me only 2 options in a view, right? If I write 4 size, it is going to show me 4 options in a single view. And that way you can select the options from here with the help of size attribute. But if you want to show, let's say 4 size or 3 size, 3 options are going to get shown, right? But what if you want to select multiple options instead of only one option? Then you can write both the things, size is equal to 4 or 3, whichever you want, and multiple attribute is there, which is going to help you select multiple attributes or multiple values like this. But In order to select multiple values, you should click on control button and then select whatever values you want, and that way you will be able to select multiple values. When you submit that, car is going to have Volvo, and car is also going to have Saab, and car is also going to have Audi. So this way you can select multiple values. Then there is a text area. Text area is also non-empty tag which needs to be closed, and whatever you write inside text area open and close element, that is going to be the value of text area. So see the output, whatever I have written here inside the text area, that is the value for the text area. And text area also have name for the label and all, but or the containing the value in it. So whenever you submit this, the text value whichever you have typed or was there is going to be the contained by message key which is sent to the server. And what is this row and calls, right? So this is row and columns with which you can just create height and width. So if I don't want this much of height, I can just minimize it to, let's say, 5, and the height is shortened now. Instead of that rows and calls, you can also use height and width, but in CSS. Okay, style is equal to height and width you can give in pixels. So this was about text area. This is used in remarks or comments or in address, right? And let's say here the text area is there, and by default it is resizable both ways, horizontally and vertically, but you can limit that also. And you can also use height and width property value combination for the CSS, and the text area can be styled accordingly with the help of style attribute of the CSS instead of rows and calls. Now button element. Button, we have already seen button open and button close you have to write, and whatever you write inside a button, it is going to be the value of the button. And type button you can write, type submit is also there, type reset is also there, but it is a normal button. We don't want to submit or reset the form. And on click is a JavaScript way of showing something or doing something in the JavaScript, but this is the event attribute where we have written this function alert, and it is going to print when I click on it. Here the alert, we are going to see it in a later in JavaScript series, but for now you should know how to create a button. Then there is field set. Field set and legends are mostly used together. That is because it creates section of the forms. So if there are 5 sections, let's say, it is going to create those 5 sections. If you see this, let's me write it personal details, right? So this section is going to be personal details. If you want more sections, you can just copy and paste this, and this way you are going to have more sections. So this one is the personal section. Let me write this one is the contact section, let's say, or education section. This way you have personal section here, contact section here, and if you don't want these two submit buttons, you can delete one of these submit button, and the only one button you can have inside the form elements, but after the field set. And that way you are going to have 2 sections and 1 submit button. So for creating the sections, you have field set open and field set close, and for naming that particular section, you have legend open and legend close, inside which you can just write your heading and it will create that section. And inside that field set, you are going to have all the elements for that section, right? Like this one. Then there is a data list which is introduced in HTML5. It is most likely like select only, but it has more feature, like you can select or search the options, right? Select or search both. So if you want to, let's say, search for Safari, you can just write some words of Safari and it is going to show you the suggestion. But if you don't want to search, you can just click on it and select anything, right? Any option. This is latest one, and it is not supported by all the old browsers, because whatever browser supported by for HTML5, that is going to work with this. And in order to create this, there is only one option you have to do. Instead of select box, you just write data list. Previously we had select keyword here and select close. Instead you just write data list. Previously we had option open and option close tag. Instead you don't need to close it here, you just write option element, and value you have to write this is the value which is going to be submitted to the server and as well as going to be shown to the user. So it works both the ways. And when you do that, this data list is going to be shown only when you click on this particular input box, right? Or search on this input box. And in order to link this particular data list to this particular input box, we have to join it. How to join it is only you have to write a id to your data list, and that particular id has to be there as a value of list attribute. So input is there, which is a text box, then list is the attribute which is going to be the same as id attribute of data list. So browsers are matching, and then it is going to show this particular data list when you click or search on this particular input box. That way you are going to have this data list here. On click of this button, and when you select that particular option, let's say Chrome, is going to be in a browser container because name of that input is browser, and it is going to be sent to the server. See here, browser is equal to Chrome, is that. So data list is also completed. Then there is output. So this is also introduced in HTML5. You may not use it because you can do this another way also in the JavaScript if you have that option. So here, if you see, input is there, which has a range type. You will see it in future. Input type range is also there. Input type number is also there. Then there is output tag, which we are going to see. So output, what it does is X, let's say it is going to have X name. But what it does is for A and B, it is going to have, right? So what is A and B? If you see, ID A and ID B is there. So ID A and ID B is nothing but this input type range and input type number. So let's say in my case, range is 0, and this input type number is 5. Now I will increase this number to, let's say, 5. Now 5 plus 5 is 10, which is it's doing. So A and B, A is input type range, B is input type number. A range has 5, let's say, and I have also typed 5. So 5 plus 5 is 10. Let's say I move the range to 100. So 105 is 105, and that is the use of this output tag. You can just write this way, and both are getting added and showing it the output here. But you can use JavaScript in that case if you want to do the addition. Then there is an input type chapter. In this chapter, we are going to see all the types. So we have already seen button type or the button tag, which can create the button. Button type is also there, which can create the button. We have seen checkbox. We have also seen password, number. We have seen radio also. We have seen checkbox, and whatever we have not seen, we are going to cover in this chapter. So here, input type text we have already covered, so we are not going to see that. Input type password also we have already covered. It is not going to show the text, right, whatever you write. Then there is input type submit, that also we have covered. When you click on this submit button, the data is going to be sent to this particular action we have written on the form. Then we have not covered reset button. Okay, let me show you that. So when you type reset button, so there is a submit button. Along with it, there is an input type reset also, right? And if you want to give the value to it, you can just write clear, let's say, or by default value is reset. So what it does is, let's say I have written some text right here, and you want to clear that and have the default values. You can just click on this button and it will remove all the values. So that is the use of input type reset. Then input type radio we have already covered. Input type checkbox also we have already covered. Input type button. So this is another way of creating a button. So instead of button tag, you can write input tag, and type you can write as a button, and you don't need to close it. You can just write a value and it will create a button. The same way you can create the button like this also. So button open and button close, and inside that you want whatever, let's say XYZ, that text you can write, and it is also going to create the button. Input type color is HTML5 version of input, which is supported by latest browser. So when you write input type color, you can have this color prompt or box where you can select any color and select any color you want. It is going to give you the value in the form of RGB or the HSL or the hexadecimal code as well. You can also select values from here somewhere, and it will show you the color type. And if you want to give this or set the color to default, let's say I want white color, so you can write this way and it will be selected as the default value. So default value is by default 0 here, because I have not written 6 times white here, and now it is white. And now if I say it is FFF, and 0 is black and FFF is 6 times is white. So that was input type color. Input type date is also there, where you can select the date, and the calendar is going to be shown. Previously we were using calendar plugins for with the jQuery, but with the help of HTML5 you can just write input type date, and the date is going to be selected with the help of this calendar. You can select it. Then there is a min and max also. So you, for the numbers, for range or for date, you can select minimum and maximum value, right? So with the help of min and max, you can just write a min is equal to what? Min is equal to, let's say, 2000 year, January month, and first date and January month, let's say. So I cannot go below that. So if you see the 2000, it is mentioned, right? So I am not able to go below the 2000 value, like 1990 or 1995, because here it is given 2000, right? Let me write 1995, so we will be able to go till that point here. Yes, correct. So this is the min attribute, which where you can write the date in this form. And there is a max attribute also, like for this particular, they have written max till 1979. So you will not be able to go beyond 1979. Yes, correct. So this is the use of min and max. Then there is a date time local also, which is also going to be the same as input type date, but the thing is you can also select the hour, minute, and AM PM also, like this. And it is going to have date and time both. And that is possible because of input type date time dash local. Then there is input type email. So whenever you have input type email, you can apply validation as well, like this. So input type email is there, where you can write any text, but when you submit it, it is going to prompt or show you the message that @ is missing. When you write @ it is going to say, okay, something is missing, like W dot or something like that. And when you write a valid email, then only it is going to submit like this. And that is a beauty of input type email. When you write input type image, you can write any, or you can give any image to that this particular field, and this is by default submit button. So whenever you write input type image, that is going to create submit button. So input type submit, you need not to write if you write input type image, and you can give any image to it. And when you are done typing, you can just click on that image and your form will get submitted, because that is the alternate of input type submit. You can just write input type image and give src as we have given for in img tag, right? You can give height and width also, and this way the image is going to be the submit button now from now on. So input type file is also there. Whenever you want to upload some files to the server, you can write input type file, and it is going to give you the user interface to select the file. So from here you can select any file, and it is going to get submitted to the form. So input type file is for selecting the files. There is input type hidden also. So whenever you want to set the value to any of the fields, but you don't want to show it to the user, like ID, or let's say roll number, or any other value, right? The customer ID. You don't want to show it to the user, but you want to get it submitted to the server. That time you can just use input type hidden. You can give your value, or with the help of JavaScript, you can set the values. And when you submit that, yeah, you are not going to see the input type hidden, right? But when you submit that, you have this fname also, which you have typed, but the customer ID as well, because it was hidden but it was submitted. Then input type month is there. With this you can only select the month like this, and not the date and time. Then there is input type number, which we can use to write age or mobile number, like that. There is input type tail also, recently introduced by HTML5, which can let you write the input number as well, like mobile number. But we are seeing input type number. Here you can write any value, let's say 5, and you can increment or decrement from here, like this. But here min and max attributes are given. That's why they are limiting us to not go below 1 and not go beyond 5. That way you can do this. If you remove that min and max, you will be able to increment and decrement it whichever way you want. So input type number is also there. Then we are not going to go in detail, because this is a basic series of HTML. So input type number we have seen, min max also we have seen, default value also you can set, let's say default value is 30, but here is another attribute step 10. So whenever you increment or decrement, that step 10 is written, so it is not going to increment by 1 like 31, 32. It is going to increment by 10, because here step 10 is written. Let's say step is 5. In that case, it is going to increment by 5 like this, or decrement by 5. So step attribute is also there for input type number. Then there is a range attribute. We have already seen minimum or maximum range you can give, and it is going to show you this range where the user can select. And when it is submitted, the server can capture what value was selected. Then input type search is there. This is also input type text only, but with added advantage, like you can just type something and just remove something with the help of this close button. That is the use of input type search. Whenever you have something to search, you can use this. Input type tell, as I said, you can write mobile number here in input type tell, and you can give the placeholder as also. So placeholder is something which gives the hint to the user. So 123 dash and all this is written here, right? So that is not a text. When you start typing, it goes, and that gives you the user the hint in which format the text should be or number should be. Here pattern attribute is also used, which is a regular expression pattern which we can give here, which we were used to give in JavaScript, but you can use it here also with the help of HTML5 pattern. And the pattern you have to write, like here they have given the first 3 elements should be from 0 to 9, and then dash should be there, and this is the pattern. You can use that also. So input type tell is there for the telephone numbers. Input type time is also there. So time is something when you can only select the time, like hour, minutes, and AM, PM, and that is the use of input type time. Then there is one more input type URL, where you can just copy paste the URLs like this. So if I want this URL, I can just copy and paste it here and submit that. You can also use input type text, no issues, but input type URL is also provided with HTML5. Then there is input type week. Input type week is going let you select the week whichever you want. So let's say I want 27th week of this year, so that will get selected with the help of input type week. Then this chapter is done. Now what we have is we have input attribute chapter and form attribute chapter, both are remaining. So input attribute, so let's say there is input type text and value is this, right? We have already covered all of these. Read only attribute also we have covered. So here read only is written, so this particular text is going to be read only and not going to be editable. So here if you see read only is there, I am not able to type anything here, but for this particular text I am able to type, because here it is not read only. So read only does not allow user to type anything in it. Then there is a disable attribute, that is also like read only, but in that case the form data is not going to submit in at the server level. So let's say disabled is there, it is grayed out, I am not able to type, but when I submit it, this f name is not there at all, because that was disabled. But in case of read only, whatever the data was there, it was getting submitted. See, even though it was read only, that is getting submitted. We have covered disabled. Then there is size attribute. Size is going to create the width or minimize the width. Here you can say one field have more width and one field have less width. Size 50 is going to create like this, and size 4 is this for field. Then there is max length attribute. Max length is going to restrict the user to type anything more than that. So let's say max length is 4, so I will not be able to write more than 4 values here. And size is something which sets the width only. Min max we have already covered for the date or number. Then there is multiple attribute. So for the file, you can write multiple attribute and it will allow you to select multiple files like this. This also, this also, this also. And you can select multiple files, 3 files it is showing for the files. So multiple is the attribute. Then there is a pattern attribute which we have already seen. It can accept these kind of patterns only, whichever you give. You can find multiple patterns on the internet. So let's say country code you have to write. So it is saying that you should write A to Z capital or A to Z small characters, and that should be only 3 length. So IND is for India, and that is accepting it. But if you write India, let's say, it is not going to accept it. Or if you write IN only, that is also not acceptable, because here pattern is given in such a way that 3 lengths should be there from A to Z. Then placeholder we have already seen. Required also we have seen. Step also we have seen for numbers. Autofocus. So autofocus is something which we can give to only one element at a time in the form or in the web page, and whichever autofocus thing you are going to give, that particular element is going to be autofocused by default. So when I load the page, see this, the first element is going to have the cursor blinking on it. Yeah, I am refreshing the page and it is going to have cursor blinking because it is having autofocus attribute. Okay, so height and width for the image we have already covered. List attribute we have already seen in the data list. Autocomplete we have already seen in the form. Okay, so this chapter is also done. There is only one chapter remaining for this video, which is form attributes. So form attributes is HTML5 thing which allows the user to have any element like input or any radio or anything outside the form tag, and also it will be the part of that particular form. So here input type text is there. Okay, so L name is there, F name is there, and F name is inside the form element, and there is a submit button and etc. also. But this particular part is outside of this form, right? So when I go here and type something in it and submit it, it is going to have first name this, and L name is not written because L name is part of this, right, outside the form. But if I write both, that is also going to consider first name and last name, because this particular form attribute is there, which is going to tell the browser, okay, this particular field is also the part of this particular form, and for that you should have this particular id matching, form id matching to this form attributes value. Then there is a form action. So we have action mentioned here for the form. Let's say on this particular submit button, the data is going to be submitted to this particular URL. But what if you want to have another submit button, and on click of that, the data should be submitted to another server, let's say. And that's why input type submit is there, but this time form action will be this particular page2.php. And that way you will be able to submit data to both the servers. Let's say now the data is submitted to this form where background is white, and if I submit it to this, the background is gray, and this is happening because this form action attribute value is different this time. Okay, and this was inside a form, by the way. Then there is a form encryption type. So whenever you send the file also to a server, the form should be having encryption type as multi-part, because it is having text also and as well as image or any other file data, and multi-part slash form data you should be writing this particular section here. But what if you want to submit only text data, so you can type it here and submit it, it will be submitted. But if you select any field like form or file, let's say, then you can just click on this button and it is going to have form encryption type as a multi-part form data. And let's say you don't want to do that and send the text and file also, you don't need this particular button itself, and you can just write encryption type is equal to multi-part slash form data and on the form, and it will also submit the text data and as well as file if you have any here, input type file. And this way it is going to submit this first name and the file as well to the server if you have encryption type multi-part form data. Then form method is there, which we have already seen. By default get method is there, you can change it to post. So let's say by default is get, but if you submit this, it is going to submit it with the get method. But if you want another submit button with which when you click on it, it will be submitted as post method. So you can change the form default values, right, this way. So form target is also there. So we have already seen this target attribute we had written. Instead of that, it is going to submit it in the same window, But if you click on this particular button, which is form target, again input type submit, but form target this time is blank. So when you click on this button, it is going to create a new window. So this way, I think we are at the end of our chapter. Let me check. Yes. So let me see what we have covered till now, and if there is remaining, I will consider that as well. So in the form attributes chapter, we have covered almost everything: form post, form target, form. Okay, form no validate is remaining. So no validate we have already seen, and let's say this form is going to be validated like this. It is asking for the email, right? But when I click on this button, it is not asking me any email, it is getting submitted. Why? Because instead of adding no validate here for the form, what I'm doing is I'm adding form no validate attribute, and value is also form no validate, and that's why when I click on it, the form is not getting validated. So HTML5 has introduced this feature to have multiple options for the form where you can change the settings. So when no validate, previously we have used like this. Okay, so we have covered all the chapters like form attributes, element types, input attributes, and input form attributes as well. I hope you will follow this video, share this video with your friends and family, whoever wants to learn this, and you can slow down the speed of this video and watch and do the coding simultaneously at your end to see how it works and create your own forms. See you in the next video. Thank you for watching.